Earth is being invaded, but no one knows it. When Jake, Rachel, Tobias, Casey, and Marco stumble upon a downed alien spaceship and its dying pilot, they're given an incredible power. They transform into any animal they touch. With it, they become Animorphs. So begins K.A. Applegate's epic series about 5 normal kids with limitless amounts of forms and abilities. Now, I don't know about you, but I remember exactly where I was, college, and who told me, old roommate, that Animorphs is apparently pretty good. Or maybe you were the kid that read Animorphs, and you're like, fuck you, yeah, it was good. All I knew was the weird book cover, because those book covers are so weird. They're very eye-catching. Obviously, I've never read Animorphs. All I know is basically what the back just said, as well as people describe it as PTSD for kids, or kids experiencing PTSD. It's apparently very dark. The first 5 came out in the first year of publication, which is 1996. Never mind the fact that the entire Animorphs series is, I think, 54 books long, but the fact that I think the longest time you would have to wait as a kid for the next book to come out, I think was 3, maybe 4 months. That's so intense, but you gotta respect it. I did look to see if my library had any physical copies left, and they don't. It's just hundreds of copies of ebooks. But yeah, let's dig into The Invasion. And if you're new here to the channel, please consider subscribing and like the video. I plan on reading the series as long as I'm still having fun. So let's see these kids experience PTSD. I've only read chapter 1, but the scene is set pretty quickly. It's also immediately oozing charisma. It's so captivating right off the bat. Jake is telling the story and he says, I can't tell you my last name. That would be too dangerous. The controllers are everywhere. They might live where you live. And it's just very classic setup for a children's book. We're given the impression that all of this is written down. So we're reading journals by these kids, I guess. And he's hoping that the Andalites return and rescue them, because they promised they would. So we're introduced to Marco, which is his best friend. Tom is his big brother. Tobias is a weird kid. He seems to get bullied a lot. Rachel is pretty, but she's also his cousin. And Casey is the exact opposite. And something I kind of appreciate is that it just straight up says, she's black and wears her hair short. And I don't know, something about that is so like, yes, her ebony skin glistens in the sun. No, she's black. They're all leaving the mall and they cut through the construction site and he's like, my parents would kill me. And at the end of the chapter, Casey sees a flying saucer. When the Andronite comes out, he looks as if he's fused a person and a deer together. The creature had head and shoulders and arms that were more or less where they should have been, where the skin was pale shade of blue, but below that he had fur, a mix of blue and tan, covering a 4-legged body that really did look like it belonged to a deer, or maybe a small horse. He goes on to say he has 2 eyes, but also has horns with eyes on the end of each of those, which also I feel like a, what's the opposite of a callback? Oh my god. Some foreshadowing that, potentially, that he says he feels like the alien is someone he's known forever. As the intro said, the Andronite is dying, and he's saying that the Yeerks are coming to destroy them. And him. And the Yeerks are parasites. They must have a host to live in. In this form, they are known as controllers. They enter the brain and are absorbed into it, taking over the host's thoughts and feelings. And so the Yeerks are looking to control Earth. Because the Andronite's gonna die, he gives them the power. It is a piece of technology that the Yeerks do not have. The power to morph. To become any other species. Then it specifies any animal, but he says any species first. They just have to touch it first to acquire the DNA. I'm getting more and more comfortable. I'm so sorry. They just can't do it for more than 2 hours, or else they'll be trapped and unable to return to their human form. Visser 3 is the Yeerk that's come to take over the planet. Also, after he's like, the Andronites have the technology to morph, but also this Yeerk named Visser 3, he can morph. But he's the only one. And we learn that the Andronite's name is Prince Elfinager Prince Elfinager Cyrenial Shamtul. Yep. But he's a prince, and he's about to die. They run away from the Yeerk, and the prince has been putting these, like, images into their head as they run away to kind of try and, like, lore dump as much as he can onto them before he dies. And so these kids can work together to find, or to stop the Yeerks that are controlling humans, because they're already here. And as they're running away and the prince dies, they hear laughter. And Jake says, for a moment, it seems to me like one of those laughing voices was familiar. Like I'd heard it before. And that's at the beginning of chapter 6. And that's obviously going to be someone he knows, right? That's going to be like a teacher. It's his brother. I mean, it could be a teacher, but it's his brother. So yeah, there's the first 6 chapters. I'll check in when I'm halfway. I'm having a blast. I'm having so much fun. I don't know. I didn't expect this. But they're all kind of exploring their powers, and there's an article in the newspaper saying that the police had gone to the construction site, and that there were a bunch of teenagers letting off fireworks, and they ran away. And because of the fireworks, people were claiming UFOs. And so the police seem to be covering up the UFOs. Weird, huh? And then chapter 11 basically says ACAB. Weird. And they also have come to the conclusion that Tom is also a controller. I will say, I really appreciate the fact that the book hasn't danced around that for too long. They made it pretty obvious, and they're assuming that you've caught on. And Tobias is later flying around saying that he was looking for a Yeerk pool, which he learned from Andalite, pushing a bunch of images into their minds. And he said it's where the Yeerks live in their natural state. Every 3 days, a Yeerk has to leave the body of the host and go into the Yeerk pool to soak up nutrients, especially the Kandrina rays. The Kandrina is a device that produces Kandrina particles. See, it's like the portable version of the Yeerk's home sun. The Yeerks need Kandrina particles to live, like a human needs vitamins. The Kandrina particles are beamed from wherever the Kandrina is and concentrated in the Yeerk pool. Make sense? If this wasn't a kid's book, I'd be more concerned about remembering the vocabulary words. But I'm kind of expecting the book to hold my hand a little bit, so I'm not too worried about remembering what Kandrina rays and Kandrina particles are, or where they're from, which is the Yeerk sun. I will also say this, I can't imagine a kid younger than like 10 reading this and not risking getting nightmares. It's pretty dark and spooky and kind of graphic. I would say the kids in here are like 7th grade? 6th grade, the youngest. With how simply it's written, I can understand this not being marketed as a middle grade book. But I don't know, juvenile is way too large of a spectrum, of a range, I mean. And this just doesn't feel like that young of like an elementary book. Maybe an 8-year-old can read this, if they're like super cool. Let's see if we can finish this today. So the kids decide to go to the Sherry, which is a club that Tom is a part of, and the policeman that tried to interrogate them in chapter 11 mentioned as well. So they're like 99% sure this is where the Yeerks are meeting. And this is where Jake is talking to Tom, and he feels like his face is normal, but his eyes are like screaming for help. And then the rest of the crew is also like, everyone's like a little too happy and a little too excited to be here. They're all definitely controllers. And so they're spying on the like official members, I think is what they call it, because they have like associates and then higher ups, and the higher ups are, you know, the Yeerks, the people who have been controlled long enough to be in charge. And Jake hears a voice that he recognizes from the other night at the construction yard, and I assumed the laugh and the voice were from the same people. While the laugh was Tom's, the voice is the assistant principal Chapman. I said teacher. I knew it was someone from school, but he seems to be the one in charge. And they're talking about the Yeerk pool and get the idea that the pool is in their school. So Jake is going to stalk the assistant principal at school Monday. And in doing so, he finds out that the pool is behind a secret door in the janitor's office. And so when they're talking about the plan to sabotage the Yeerks and their pool, Marco's the one who comes up with the term Animorph. But the night that they plan their sabotage, Casey isn't there and find out that the policeman, once again from chapter 11, has abducted her, and they're gonna try to turn her into a controller. So they all animorph and attack the Hork-Bajir, which are the controllers for the Yeerks currently. And they're not humans, they seem to be the Hork-Bajir. And in the beginning, the android had warned them and asked them to show them mercy, because they were originally not violent creatures, I believe, but now that they're being controlled, they're acting against their will. So they all animorph, they fight, they try to release the humans while the Yeerks escape from their brain and dip into the pool and then go back into the humans. In that interlude, they're trying to release the humans while attacking Visser 3, who also then animorphs into this thing with a bunch of heads, or morphs into this thing with a bunch of heads. And they all escape. They don't get to free anyone but one person. So the plan definitely kind of failed, and we learn that Tobias got stuck. He wasn't able to leave the cave with everyone else. He had to hide out for too long and is now stuck, morphed as a red-tailed hawk. So that was pretty fast. That was pretty quick of a getting bit in the ass type of scenario. And it's sad, but I guess I expected it to be not as sad. He made it pretty clear quite a few times that he didn't have a family. He really had nothing to lose. He doesn't have his parents, and he gets shuffled in between his, I believe, aunt and uncle, who don't even live in the same state. And he was also the one throughout the book to really kind of fight having to morph back into a person. That's Animorphs The Invasion. A very good start to the series. I'm definitely excited to read The Encounter. I believe that's next. No, The Visitor is what's next, I believe. Yeah, The Visitor is next, and that's Rachel. So we won't hear from Tobias until book 3. I kind of feel, maybe I shouldn't feel silly giving this 5 stars. But I have no complaints. This was fun. The writing was good. The characters are separate. They're their own people. They're also fairly diverse. It made a point to say that Marco had, like, darker skin. So it's not a tale of a bunch of white kids and, like, the token black girl. They all have their own, thoughts and motives, and they care about people outside of just who they are and this, like, one other, I guess, archetype that they represent. I mean, yeah, damn. 5 stars. And I'll see you in 2 seconds for The Visitor. Book 2, baby. We got The Visitor, and we're following Rachel. She opens up with the same spiel as Jake, but instead of saying I, she says we, which is an interesting difference. We get a pretty good recap, although it is kind of funny how much it's recapping, considering this came out the same exact month as the first one. The books came out, what was it? First 2 were in June of 96. 2 months later is The Encounter, 2 months later is The Message, 2 months later is The Predator. But we get a recap reminding us of vocabulary words and the important lore bits. The beginning kind of hammer homes the fact that they are sharing these instincts with the animals that they're morphing into. It's not just the kids that are controlling it. It is the animal they are morphing into. I wonder if the animal is kind of being duplicated, like their conscience, their like soul, because the kids have, yes, the instincts, but also like the memories of the animals they're morphing into, because Rachel later morphs into her friend's cat and she's like, this smell is familiar, I know this smell. Anyways, they're kind of just reiterating they have to be careful because the natural instincts will take over if they don't, but also that sometimes it's good to give in to the instincts. But I'm enjoying Rachel's voice. She's far more poetic than Jake, which is interesting. It's like immediately, it's such a different tone. It comes off very successfully that we are reading from someone else. They're very distinct characters from one another. She's also coming at it from a different perspective. She comments a lot more on everyone's looks than Jake did, which I think makes sense as a teenage girl, pre-teenage girl, to be so hyper aware of. So the plan is for Rachel to morph into her friend's, her like ex-best friend, maybe not ex, but like her old best friend's Melissa's cat, which has the name Fluffer McKitty. Give me a worse pet name. And I love bad pet names. I love a dog named Kitty. I love a cat named Donut. They're great names. And kids are bad with names. Kids will name their pet Bunny Bunny. And they get a new bunny, and this one's Bunny too. But Fluffy McKitters, but Kitty McFluffy. No, it is Fluffy McKitten. What? McKitty. Like McKinley, the president? McKitty. Anyways, Melissa is the daughter of the assistant principal, Chapman, from the last book. And Rachel and her used to be best friends, and they just kind of grew apart. So Rachel's dealing with some kind of internal morals of feeling like she is using her friend to get close to the Yeerks, since her father is a Yeerk controller, or a human controller. And so she has to morph into the cat because Melissa otherwise she's still very distant and obviously very depressed. And she's just not letting Rachel in. And so Rachel's getting ready to morph, and then someone, I think it's Casey, is like, oh, his fluffer is fixed. And I thought it was trying to be like, does Rachel not want to morph into it and have kitty balls? Or is she not going to have any kitty balls because she doesn't have any? But no. It was just the fact that male cats are more predatory. And so egg on my face. But she gets in, and obviously the Chapmans, both of them are controllers, and that's why Melissa's depressed, because her parents aren't her parents. They don't, they're not cooking with the radio on, and he's not sitting in the living room watching TV. He's just sitting there staring at the wall, and the mom is just cutting up vegetables. Like they're silent. That's definitely a little ominous and hard to realize that a kid would have these parents very suddenly switch and not show the same kind of affection and love and care that normal parents do, because the Yeerks don't care about that. They're buying time. They're waiting for the mission to continue. So Rachel, morphed as the kitty cat, follows Chapman into this evil basement lair that he has. It's described as a bank vault, which, ignore the fact that how does this make sense? When was this built? How much money? What matters is that he gets on like a Skype call. But it's hologram with Visser 3, and we learn that the Yeerk that is controlling Chapman is called Innis 226. I think its title is Innis, and they're talking about finding the kids that they think are Andalites, and Visser 3 threatens Innis 226 by telling the Council of 13. Rachel smells something, and I want to say this because it might be a plot point later, but she smells something before she can put her nose on it. Visser 3 spots her in the hologram. So he's like, what the fuck is that? And it's like, it's a pet. The human child loves his pet. And he's like, oh, kill the pet, because that pet might be an Andalite. And so now Rachel is potentially about to die in a bank vault. And I'll leave you there with my 2-second cliffhanger, because I only read a little bit after that before leaving the park. So let me go finish this real quick. So after Rachel dies, Chapman is worried about his cover being blown if the cat dies, because a human child will be upset, as in Melissa, Rachel's best friend, Rachel's ex-best friend. He's worried that she'll be naturally upset that her cat was killed and taken care of and cause a big ruckus and blow their cover. And we learn that Visser and Chapman, the original human Chapman, had a deal. And it's later clarified that it sounds like the wife was controlled first, and she pressured Mr. Chapman into making a deal with Visser, into also getting a Yeerk, but he said only if their daughter was left untouched. He was doing it to protect her. And so the fact that Visser 3 is now threatening the cat and the daughter, he's trying to fight the Yeerk inside him, controlling everything. At first, Visser is like, fine, whatever, but find me the Andalites, the Animorphs. But the next day, Rachel goes back and blows their cover again. The only difference is Jake has animorphed into a flea and rode Rachel into the house. That way Rachel is not alone. Oh, there was also this important scene with Melissa's crying because she's asking for help for homework and her parents are like, yeah. And so Rachel as the cat is trying to comfort her. And she has this moment of, she's like, next time Marco asks why we are fighting the Yeerks, I knew I had a whole new answer. Because they destroyed the love of parents for their daughter. Because they made Melissa Chapman cry in her bed with no one to comfort her but her cat. It's very sweet. And the part of the reason why Marco is so against morphing and helping the Andalites and going out of their way to do all this dangerous shit is because we knew before that Marco's mom died. From Jake's book, we learned that Marco just lives with his dad. But from Rachel's perspective, she says it's because Marco's mom disappeared. She drowned, and they never found the body. So they just said she disappeared. So that's interesting. That's certainly never going to come up again in a major story point. But that's why Marco is so against all of this, because he's like, I'm all my dad has. I can't have anything dangerous happen to me, which will also absolutely be an important story point, where everyone else is, I'm sure, willing to do something extremely dangerous and is like, for the greater good, and Marco might not be. Chapter 16 also starts, it was a dark and stormy night. Sorry, I've always wanted to write that, but it really was dark and stormy. Just to remind you that these kids are writing down what happened. And it's, again, building the irony of when did they write this down? How much further into the future do they do this? Is it years or is it the next week? We also don't know who they're writing it down for. If they're writing it to document their history, their battles, or if it's a warning sign of, we couldn't do it, but you can. Like, who knows? I really like it. I feel like it's important to point out because I'm reading this while also working on my next reading vlog, and I'm crashing out with the fourth wall shattering, but this is doing it well. Anyways, like I was saying, they got caught the next night. Visser saying, like, this is obviously an Androlite spying on us because this cat has never been here before, and now it's here twice, and it's like, yeah, obviously this is extremely sus and stupid of them to do, but they're children and have no patience. But Rachel has to allow the cat's natural instincts to take over because Rachel says that she wants to give in. She wants to give in to the fear and kind of confess her sins and be done with this. Whereas the cat doesn't understand what Visser 3 is. He has nothing to fear, Mr. Fluffy McKitten. So Rachel kind of steps back and allows the cat to not react to Visser 3 trying to intimidate the Androlite, to get it to react and prove that it is a morphed creature. And we also get Visser learning more about what a cat is. It's just one of those things that kind of reiterates that you are in fact reading a kid's book, and they are going to be learning when reading this book. And he's comparing it to the tiger that Jake was in the last book, and he's like, oh, they're the same but different. Anyways, Rachel gets kidnapped. They get taken to the construction area to, as I said, kill, threaten the Androlite. But they make a bunch of distractions and they get away, and that's kind of it. There's a really gnarly scene of these taxons. They're like soldiers. One of the taxons is injured. And so Visser is like, just eat them. And so they all eat the other taxon. And it's like, okay, that was pretty metal. And at the very end, Rachel writes a letter to Melissa being like, your parents may not act like it, but trust me, they love you. The book kind of ends with, once again, the plot not moving forward at all, actually. Nothing's happened except for these kids have put their lives in danger in stupid ways. So the Visitor, I'm gonna say 4.5. I'm going to be generous and say 4.5 because I think it is kind of really impressive how different Rachel's thought processes were and what she noticed and what she took care to point out that Jake didn't, and just how distinctly different she was. It did feel like a real preteen, teenage girl. It's just the ending was a little... oh no, we're fine. It was a really big threat, and it was really tense, and I was kind of like, is this gonna end on a cliffhanger? Oh my goodness. Oh, it's done. Okay. I guess we're done. I'm in the middle of a different book at the moment that I really should be more invested in and might be enough. So to take a break from that, let's instead dig into book 3 of Animorphs called The Encounter. Here's our back of the cover photo of Mr. Tobias, our red-tailed hawk, which every time I read that, I think of Wingspan. So thank you, Wingspan. So I have my most 90s appropriate shirt on. Let's get to know Toby. Oh my god, is this man depressing. Okay. So, Toby also starts the book with the same spiel of, if you knew my last name, you'd be dead. But he also adds that he's a freak of nature, which is really sad. He recaps a lot of stuff in the first couple of chapters, which is, at this point, getting a little annoying, I gotta be honest. We know that Marco is funny and a short king, and that Rachel is super cute. Dare he say beautiful. Also that Casey's parents work on an animal reserve. I get it. It's a kid's book. You gotta make sure everyone's on the same page. But also, I get it. Tobias sees a ripple in the sky. He describes it as a darkness within the darkness. He realizes that the first time he sees it, it's going to the mountain, and then later it's going away from the mountain, and impulsively decides that it is 100% a Yerk ship. The Animorphs once again get an argument of Marco not wanting to do it, and everyone else wanting to do it, blah blah blah. They're still doing it, but they have to morph into a pack of wolves, which clarifies why I was confused about the kitty balls, potentially, in the last book. And it's because they morph into the gender that they acquire. So, Jake can be the only male, because there's only one male in a pack of wolves, and Marco's complaining about being a lady. That clarifies that. It's interesting that they are, like, distinctly morphing into the things that they acquire. They're not just some wolf. And Rachel wasn't just some tomcat. They were those distinct animals, which, you know, also kind of, I would think makes it extremely confusing for other animals, because that means it was a pack of wolves with one alpha and 3 female wolves that were all the same wolf? They're investigating the mountain. Park rangers are there being sus, and then the spaceship shows itself, and they're like, holy shit, it's huge, and now the Animorphs are being sus, and everyone's being suspicious, but they're finding out that the spaceship is there. It's described as a truck. It is there to suck up the water, and it flies fast because, or the altitude that it's flying at is sucking up the air. So for some reason, the Yerks need to take Earth's supplies back to the mothership. But the reason I'm checking in is not because I'm 50%, but because Tobias is so depressing. He's so sad to read, but it's really interesting. In the beginning of the book, they freed a hawk who was being used for like commercial advertisements or whatever. And while his friends are a pack of wolves, he sees the hawk again and kind of reunites with her, and he has this extreme compulsion to go with her, to fly and stay with her rather than go back to his friends. He's starting to feel more hawk than human, and he's fearful of that. He's disgusted by it. And as he goes back to his friends, he's screaming at them that they have to morph because they're out of time. Their 2 hours are potentially up. He's kind of hoping that the clock that he saw was running fast. He doesn't know. And so the rest of the Animorphs are kind of screaming in pain, having to morph back into human because they've been these morphs for too long that their bodies don't want to do it. And once again, a very good taste of that body horror that I really can appreciate. But Tobias has this moment of like, he's terrified for his friends, and they morph back into being humans, and they're all kind of just like, whew, that was a close one. That was real spooky. Wouldn't that suck? Tobias is just like he's kind of realizing that he's stuck like this. And so he runs away. And I'm like, oh, this poor boy. Oh, he's so depressing. He's so sad. Anyways, Toby. my tea doesn't get cold while I talk. Hello. Okay, Rip the Band-Aid Off, I think my favorite book of the series so far. I probably should have filmed more of my, reactions, towards the end of the book, but I wasn't, prepared. Where we left off, Tobias is struggling. During the day, he's kind of starting to give in to his instincts. He can't hunt at night, so he kind of just sits there with his, human memories. He crashes out, as I say, and he decides to go back where he saw the hawk, the other female hawk, because he's very drawn to her, and it sounds as if she is also kind of like wooing him, you know? He senses this human running away from the Hork-Bajir, and later tells Rachel that I told the human where to go and where to hide. Like, it was either that or he's gonna die. And it was a matter of time before someone else got involved in this, at the very least. But that's definitely unresolved by the end of the book. So there's still some older kid out there. I don't know if he's an adult or just like an older teenager. Someone's out there telling stories, potentially, about a hawk talking to him telepathically. But because of this, once more, the Animorphs are being stupid. So stupid. They come up with the plan to morph into fish so they can get sucked up into the spaceship and turn the cloaking system off over the city. That way everyone can see it. How are they going to figure that out without being caught? 2, how are they going to know they're above the city? 3, how? They get sucked up into the ship and then they're like, we can't open the gate because we're stupid. Also, this hawk is picking up the fish and then just dropping them in the lake. And that once, sure, that's not suspicious. 2, 3, 4 times, bro. And Visser 3 is obviously not nearly as stupid as they are. So he is on it. And so the Taxons are shooting every creature. They're killing every single creature that they see because they don't know who's an Andalite. So Tobias is now scared for his life because they're like, we gotta kill the birds. And then he's scared for the Lady Hawk's life. Oh no, everyone's dying because me and my friends had a stupid plan. And then Rachel talks to him and is like, Tobias, listen, we're stuck in this tank of water and can't get the crate out. We don't want to get captured. We would rather die. Tobias, you gotta kill us. Oh, it's nuts. It's so fucking crazy. It's so sad, too, because this is Rachel talking to him, and Tobias and Rachel, they got a cute little thing going, and then he, like, goes to her when he needs to be comforted and reminded of the human part of him. And it's very, very cute. It's very sweet. She's like, we're not gonna kill ourselves. We're just gonna turn into humans and be stuck underwater and expire, right? And so when she's like, listen, Tobias, I might not get out of this. And Tobias is like, no, Rachel, I haven't got the chance to tell you. And she's like, it's okay. I know. Goodbye, Tobias. And it's, holy shit. Fantastic. Crazy go nuts. Anyways, Tobias does some sick moves and gets them to shoot the tank, and then they fall out and they morph into birds and they're fine. And so the Animorphs are all, you know, oh my god, we're alive, thank god. And then there's an explosion, and because the other hawk looks just like Tobias, the Taxons shoot her. And they shoot her wing off, in fact. And so she cannot fly, and she falls to the earth, never to fly again. That's what he says. Crazy! And may I add, go nuts! It's so dark. And Tobias has, like, come to terms at the end, and he's like, I am Tobias. A boy, a hawk, some strange mix of the two. You may never know my last name or where I live, but someday you may look up in the sky and see the silhouette of a large bird of prey. Be happy for me, and for all who fly free. It's so cute. Listen, 5 stars. I liked this one a lot. Like I said, the Rachel and Tobias thing, adorable. The body horror in this one especially, fantastic. The body dysmorphia? I guess that's the right word. The otherness that has been created between him and his friends. It's something that, I mean, very few people, I guess, have the misfortune to understand. Amazing. I am so excited. The next one is The Message. By the way, I haven't taken one sip of this tea. The next one is The Message, and it's through Casey's perspective, and once again came out 2 months later. Yeah, I'm excited to hear from Casey, especially because they've been getting close as well and kind of doing like little touches of the hands and stuff like that. So I'm excited for them. I'm excited to hear about them again. Hello, good morning. I'm very tired today, but I finished The Message, and I didn't even tell you that I started it. I was sick for a few days there, so I decided to kind of pick away at it, and I largely did so in audiobook. So, 2 things to address first. One, I understand that her name is Cassie. For some reason, my brain just keeps wanting to say Casey. I guess the K sounds a lot more pleasing to me. I will continue to call Cassie Casey, but I will try not to. Also, with the last book, I meant to say, I've learned that Animorphs really loves its onomatopoeias, but maybe because it was from Tobias's perspective and he's mostly bird, it was just a little cringe last book. How much it was doing the scree, roar, chew, thwack. It's a lot. It was a lot. But The Message. We're following Cassie, and she reads very interestingly. It kind of feels more like a diary entry, I think, just because of how casual and, I suppose, mundane it feels. There was a scene that was basically kind of like, so I went home and did my math homework, and the next day we didn't talk at school, because if we talked every day, that'd be suspicious. But then I saw Marco on the bus, so I said, "Hi, Marco, how are you?" And Marco said, "Hey, Cassie, I'm okay." And just something about it was very different than how the other kids have talked. And the best way I can describe it is that it just is more of a diary. Whereas the others were, I think, more focused on telling the story and the main beats that they need to hit. But in The Message, we learn that The Message is referring to Cassie and Tobias dreaming that they hear a voice from the ocean, and only the 2 of them hear it. They kind of decided it's because they're the 2 that are most connected with the morphing ability. Jake also happens to have a VCR of a man filming this piece of metal washing up on the shore, and Jake is able to tell that the alphabet is the same as the Andalites' language, so he thinks it's from an Andalite ship. So it seems as if they're getting this kind of distress signal asking for help. And because they're getting it, because of the Andalites', morphing abilities that they have, Visser 3 is also getting these distress signals. So they acquire the morph of these dolphins that are at the gardens that, Cassie's parents work at. And the dolphins just so happen to all be named after the characters from the TV show Friends, the hit 90s TV show Friends. But as they're doing this, Casey has this moment where she realizes that the dolphins are far more intelligent than all the other animals that they have acquired. And she has this thought questioning the morality of acquiring these animals. Like, are they no different than Visser 3 and the Yeerks controlling the Hork-Bajir? It's an interesting, question to propose, but I don't think it's a very solid one. Again, when they're morphing, they're not taking over the mind of these animals. They're kind of just duplicating it, I guess. Whereas the Yeerks are fully, possessing these people and creatures. But I get it. It's a fair question to propose. It also, I gotta say, there hasn't been a conversation of vegetarianism. There's been one comment, I think, from Rachel to Cassie in the second book, where one of them was like, "Oh, I thought you were gonna be vegetarian." And I think it was kind of a joke. But it's interesting that none of the others have, I guess, proposed this thought. to themselves, of questioning their own moralities, of do I feel okay? Do I feel morally just still eating a burger, even though I can morph into a cow? You know what I mean? Anyways, they all morph into dolphins and feel like a blast of time, and they're trying to find where the signal came from. And predictably, just like every other book, they get into a bit of a kerfuffle and have to try again later. But this kerfuffle, at least, clarifies the question of what would happen if they get seriously injured while in a morph. And it's because this hunchback is getting attacked by sharks. They all decide to go help, and Marcus's tail gets almost ripped off, almost completely. He has to morph back into a human, even though he can't swim. Because the logic is the DNA is not damaged, just the current form of the whale. Which I guess was kind of answered in the first book when Jake was a lizard and had his tail stepped on and it broke off. But this one was more of like a battle wound than it was an actual thing, lizards can do. So the hunchback helps them get back to shore as a form of repayment. They regroup, make a plan to go try again another time. As they're underwater, looking for this signal, they discover what is described as a park under a plastic dome in the water. Tell me what that reminds you of. It even goes so far as to say there's an airlock, okay? So once they enter Sandy Cheeks' home, they find another Andalite, and he just so happens to be the brother of Elfangor. Elfangor, not Elfanagar. Listen, I was not hooked on phonics. As a child, I learned whole language, so reading new words is hard. But Elfangor's brother also has a terrible name that I will not attempt to pronounce, and the kids just call him Axe, so I don't have to attempt to pronounce it. But he's also very young, and when asking them who their prince is, they all kind of decide it's Jake, and now Axe refers to Jake as Prince Jake. But he's able to explain to us that the Yeerks' goal with Earth is to make it a barren planet. They hate all forms of life and destroy every planet that they come across. There's only ever been 3 species that have won against the Yeerks. And all we know is that the Andalites are one of them. But because they're trying to destroy all the living things on Earth, that may have been why in the last book they were sucking up the water. The air doesn't make as much sense, but whatever. Could also just been for like experimentation or something. As they're in Sandy Cheeks' home, Visitor 3 also finds them, meaning they have to swim for their lives. And Cassie decides to drop some evolution facts on us, like, did you know some scientists believe that dolphins used to be land animals? I didn't. Also, when they're like getting tired of swimming away, she describes herself as glancing behind her to see how far Visitor 3 is. And I don't know how easy that would be to glance behind you as a dolphin without a neck, but the sentiment is there. Naturally, they escape danger once again, and Axe acquires all of the kids' DNAs and kind of becomes a mashup of their genetics to become his own morph and person. Axe also decides that he is a male human because he's a male Andalite. Rachel also says that he looks kind of cute in his Andalite form, so I guess she is into the alien thing. Also, I do have to say, I really feel for Tobias in this book because, they're in water, so he can't really join them. It's really sad, I guess, to think about the fact that I think they entered the dome close to the 2-hour mark. And then they were there resting a while, and then they swam away almost for 2 more hours until they had to morph back, and the hunchback came to their rescue to make it so they could rest and not have to swim all the way back to shore again. And then they all reunite, and Tobias is kind of just like, oh wow, an Andalite, huh? And it's like, your friends were gone for like 5 hours. Were you not terrified? And they also weren't like, we should get back. Tobias is gonna freak his shit. So that just kind of made me really sad to think about. I don't know, none of them were concerned enough to voice that, nor did they want to make sure that he was okay and that he wasn't stressed out when they returned. Axe also told us that he believes it's going to take 1 or 2 years for the Andalites to come and save Earth. And so the future of Earth for 2 years, potentially, rests on the shoulders of 4 kids, a human hawk boy, and a teenage Andalite. The message I gave book 2 a 4.5, and this was definitely not as fun, I guess, to read. It was definitely more here to kind of just add another layer of plot to the overall story, but it wasn't that fun to read. Definitely my least favorite so far. Hello, welcome back. I have accidentally finished The Predator. I meant to just start the audiobook today while doing some chores and then got busy and read all of it. Going into this, Marco is our narrator, and I gotta be honest, I was not totally looking forward to it. The main 2 things you kind of know about Marco is that he's a jokester and his mom is dead. So I was not looking forward to kind of hearing the tone of, I make other people laugh because I have a hard time smiling myself. Like, I guess expected him to be a lot more emo and annoying. A stereotypical class clown type of deal. Pleasantly surprised he was not that. He seems fairly honest, I guess, in that he just wants to keep the mood happy whenever it's not. But the book starts off with Marco turning into a gorilla and saving an old man from the bad guys in his neighborhood. And I was immediately reminded of the beginning of Tobias's book, where Marco throws a fucking fit about them saving a hawk. Thankfully, the book also addresses this, and Jake is also like, weren't you just calling Casey and Tobias insane for doing this not long ago? And it was again kind of like, Applegate does a great job of knowing when the audience has caught on to her clues and where the reader's mind is. And it's one of those reasons why I really like Yuketsu's writing. He does a great job of, even though he knows where the story's actually going, he knows where the reader, what their train of thought is going to be in certain beats. And I feel the same way with Applegate. I guess for the Animorphs, the difference between the hawk moment and the gorilla moment is character development, I suppose. I don't think it's totally successful in portraying that. It kind of just feels more like this doesn't make sense, and then the book addresses the fact that it doesn't, but doesn't do a great job of convincing me. Anyways, another thing that keeps coming up, and I kind of keep ignoring it, Marco is somehow the only one in the group that keeps either making very gendered comments or gendered comments are being made about him. And I definitely want to say that this is just my modern queer mind reading this book and putting some implications into it that possibly were not intended. But some of the reasons I say this is because, like, Marco was the one to complain. I just realized I called him Marcus earlier, didn't I? Whatever. Marco's the only one to complain when he has to morph into an animal that is not his gender, like when he was morphing into a lady wolf. I'm sure this has happened already. I can't imagine all the animals they happen to see just so happen to be the correct genders. Cassie has also commented on the fact that he has long hair, but also very pretty long eyelashes. And finally, he's commenting on the fact that Axe looks like an either really pretty boy or a kind of ugly girl when he morphs into a human. Which one, obviously not exactly a comment that has aged well. And I very easily believe that these gender comments are on Marco just because he is the comedian of the group. And, you know, it's haha, it's funny to call something gay type of thing. But on the flip side, with a stronger and mainstream queer community in the modern day, it is hard to ignore these things. Anyways, that's all I wanted to say. 3 times is a strike, so I needed to comment on it. The plot of this book is that Axe wants to return home, send a sort of distress signal, but a more powerful one to send out into space now that he has these humans and their technology to help him. Of course, they know that's not totally gonna work because Visitor 3 has already got his distress signal So the Animorphs decide to use that as a trap for Visitor 3, but we'll get there when we get there. First, we have the 2 mandatory scenes in an Animorph book, it seems, where the kids are stupid and the kids are dangerous. The more mindless scene is the fact that they take Axe to the mall and they lose him and he gets scared and he starts morphing back into an Andalite in the middle of the mall, and it's absolute mayhem. I kind of doubt that this scene is gonna have any plot consequences, I guess, in the next book, because these people have seen a boy turn into a monster, and then Marco, trying to get people out of here, is like, there's a bomb! Everyone run crazy, there's a bomb! And it might be the stupidest situation they've gotten themselves into so far. And then after screaming there's a bomb, they hide from the cops in a grocery store by turning into lobsters. And somehow, within the 2-hour time limit, the grocery store is cleared, a woman comes to buy these lobsters, and goes home to boil them, which I find difficult to believe, but I have no choice to. But they were at the mall because they're going to the one store that had absolutely anything and everything tech-related you could ever want. Radio Shack. Axe found everything but one thing that they could only get by sneaking back into Chapman's house as ants. And the scene of them leaving Chapman's house and getting attacked by enemy ants is a very gruesome scene. They are being ripped apart and like acid is getting spit at them. Also, they talk about having this total lack of self, which is also pretty damning and insane to think about. But their ant bodies are getting absolutely destroyed by other ants, and so the only option is to morph back into human. But naturally, this event kind of causes a lot of nightmares and causes the rest of the Animorphs to be pretty shaken up and depressed, seeming very haunted the next few days at school. To which Marco, he says that even strong people can break, and that he's seen it happen even to his father. The anniversary of his mother's passing coming up, he decides that this next mission is going to be his last, because he doesn't want next year for his father to have to go back to 2 graves. So they send off the signal, trying to trap the Hork-Bajir. It backfires. Oh my god. Suddenly the Animorphs are trapped, and they're kind of screwed. They are captured and enter the spaceship, and Visser 3 is like, well, congrats to you. We have a special guest. It's Visser 1, and we know from Chapman's office that Visser 1 is a human. Weird. My goodness. And we're introduced to Visser 1, and my goodness. It's Marco's mother. It's not, the biggest plot twist in the world, at least for an adult. I can imagine feeling extremely smart figuring that out as a child before it happened. But even then, it's still well written and it's still an enjoyable scene. It's not as if I feel like I've had the rug pulled out for me or anything. It's still very impactful. But Visser 1 and Visser 3 do not get along. So much so that even though the Animorphs are trapped and trying to figure out a way to escape, Visser 1 sends back her men, her bodyguards, back to the Animorphs and tells them how to escape because she wants to make Visser 3 look really bad. It's either Rachel or Cassie's laughing about, the fact that these alien politics is what's going to save them. But it does. And lo and behold, they survive. And we don't know concretely if Marco is actually going to leave the Animorphs. It definitely implies that he won't because, now he has someone to fight for on the other side. He has questions for his mother. If she willfully allowed the York into her mind, if it was forced, how long before she escaped? How long before she disappeared? Was she a controller for? Very exciting for everything. But that's going to be for next time. Now, I did have a few other things to say because I started editing this and was forced to look into the Wikipedia and found out that not only is there a 90s TV show that premiered on YTV and Nickelodeon that was filmed in Toronto, but there are also 3 Animorph video games that I so very desperately want to play, but they look like they happen pretty late in the series. I couldn't find where in the timeline these would fit, so if someone else knows, please let me know. Also, no spoilers in the comments. Hit enter a few times so I don't accidentally read it, or anyone else for that matter. There's a ton of spoilers online for Animorphs, and it's very stressful trying to pull images or just like any further information without accidentally seeing that Jake is referred to as Prince Jake a whole like 50 pages before I get there. The plan is to continue this. We'll see how well the video does, I guess. But thank you so much for joining me in this adventure into Animorphs. I've been pretty loud about reading the series over on Instagram while working on this, and it's been a ton of fun exploring it for the very first time. So please let me know if you've enjoyed this, if you've read Animorphs and how far, or if you've never read it like me. But I think that's it. Have a lovely day.